Now, if on your own you had to go and write all of this infrastructure to create sessions and properly protect them and maintain them, it'd be really difficult to go and write a cloud service that's using HTTP to talk to clients. So one of the nice things is that Spring provides a framework or an implementation of sessions on top of HTTP that we can use in our applications. So the way this works is we have a client that is talking to our dispatcher servlet that Spring is providing for us. And remember, we don't normally do anything directly with the dispatcher servlet. It's just responsible for going and invoking our controllers. And we may have multiple controllers, so we'll just say S here. So we have all of these controllers. So all of the requests are going through this dispatcher servlet. And I'm going to start using HTTPS now because we're going to emphasize the fact that we want these things to be secure when we're beginning to establish sessions. So when we're talking to our dispatcher servlet and we want to establish a session, there is a framework that we can use called Spring Security. And this is part of the Spring framework. And basically what the Spring Security framework does is it automatically provides the ability to log in and then send session cookies back to the client. And then using a filter that's right here in the front of the requests. So the filter is basically an object that's receiving and looking at the requests as they come in and then checking the data and automatically pre-processing them. So using a filter, what happens is when the clients send a request, if there's no cookie here and you're sending a request to some controller and some method on some controller that's supposed to be protected or associated with a user. So let's say we have a video upload controller, and every time somebody uploads a video, we want to know the user that uploaded it because we're going to track how much space they're using up in their account. We want to know which person uploaded which video. So we want to force somebody to log in and establish a session and prove their identity before they upload a video. So if you go and your client tries to send a request to that controller to upload a video, basically Spring Security is going to see that you have said, I want /upload to be protected. Or this might be /video/post or whatever the URL is. But you may have some set of URLs that you want protected. Like I want anything to /video that's a post to require somebody to log in first so that in that controller method I can see who the person is that's trying to do it. Who's trying to upload the video. And in order to get access to who, you need to force them to establish their identity. So what the Spring Security Framework does is this filter looks at the incoming request and it says, is there any type of session information in here that I can use to establish the identity of this client? So it may look at this request that's coming in and it may say, oh, I see a session cookie. I will go and look up the user associated with that session cookie and I will attach it to the request. And then when the controller is invoked, the controller will have access to the user. So, or it may go in and say there's no data in here that provides information about a session. There's no session cookie, there's no other data. I'm going to redirect this client to the login page. And then after they log in, it would look at the next request and say, oh, there's a session cookie here now. I'll allow this request to go forward. So Spring Security is this gatekeeper that sits at the front and looks at what are you trying to access down here? Is the thing that you're trying to access down here something that requires a session, that requires an identity of the client? And then based on that identity, it can make a determination about whether or not you should have access to it or not. So Spring Security is this gatekeeper that looks at the request, decides what the identity is of that client, and then decides whether or not that client should have access to that particular resource or that method on that controller. And that's what Spring Security is doing. So Spring Security can make this determination in a number of ways, but as we've seen, it can use sessions. So Spring Security can automatically check a request to see if it has a session cookie. If it does, it can look up the user associated with that session cookie and then pass the request down, if appropriate, to a method and a controller, and the controller can see the user associated with the request. If it doesn't have a session cookie, it can redirect the client to the login page and force the client to provide a username and password, which Spring Security will then validate against the list of users and then return a session cookie to the client. So Spring Security can handle that login aspect as well as the checking of the incoming requests once somebody's logged in for session information that it can then use to automatically decide which user is sending the request and forward that information on to the controllers. And we're going to talk in detail about how we access the identity information from a controller and how we configure the Spring security framework to know about our users. And using this framework, we don't have to worry about how does the session cookie get sent back. How do we remember when a session is associated with a particular user? All of that is provided by Spring Security. We can customize it, but we can build on top of it and just focus on telling Spring Security, here are my controllers. These are the methods on my controllers that are sensitive and I want to know the identity of the client. Here are the types of clients and identities that I will allow to access different methods. All of that type of determination about who gets access to different methods and controllers is controlled and guarded by Spring Security. And it does all of the identity establishment based on the information in the requests coming in from the clients.